Predicting Africa's future. In the year 2098, the world is indeed advancing in technology and material things. But the question is, will Africa also be at the top or left behind? Africans have suffered many setbacks, conflicts, and corruption in the past few years. Is the future something to be hopeful about or scary? Here is my future prediction about Africa in the year 2089, if nothing is being done, and African politicians still see Africa as a one-man business instead of growing it. By 2098, Africa's population is projected to reach approximately 3.785 billion people, making it one of the most populous continents in the world. This growth is driven by countries like Nigeria, Ethiopia, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which are expected to be among the world's largest countries by population. Some of the top countries in Africa by population in 2098 are Nigeria, 839.9 million, Ethiopia, 303.4 million, Egypt, 187.1 million, DR Congo, 571.9 million, South Africa, 70.8 million. The Nile was no longer a river. It had become a gray, angry sea, swallowing the streets of Cairo inch by inch. Children clung to rooftops as families clambered higher, their screams lost in the roar of the waters. The old city, once a jewel of history, was now a ghost, its monuments barely visible beneath the relentless waves. Across Egypt, the government scrambled, helicopters hovering over drowning districts, but their efforts were too late. The people were left to their fate, and in the chaos, rage began to simmer. This is Voices of the Forgotten, where Africa's buried truths rise again. Moving to South Africa in the year 2098. A beautiful country raised to power, very rich, but affected by greedy politicians. Weak governance and corruption run so deep that almost all the youths from 18 to 40 years in South Africa become jobless. There are very high crime rates. People start stealing and killing from one another to stay alive. Economic stagnation. The economy shows slow growth, and structural weaknesses like infrastructure bottlenecks and skills shortages limit potential and job creation. More than 50 million jobless people roam the streets, but can't secure a job. South Africa becomes a survival town, and it's every man for himself. Climate change becomes a big problem. Flooding kicks in, and almost half of South Africa becomes flooded. It continues until it harms sectors like agriculture and mining. Scarcity of food comes in, and starvation ensues, and many people lose their lives. Issues like violence against women, child malnutrition, and rights for migrants and older people become serious problems. Remember, the year is 2089. In 2089, Nigeria faces significant problems, including a deepening economic crisis marked by high inflation and debt, widespread insecurity from conflicts in the northeast and farmer-herder clashes, and severe social issues like high poverty, food insecurity, and unemployment. Nigeria's population grows to 839.9 million. Remember, we are in 2089. Unemployment is a pressing issue, especially among the youth, with social implications such as increased poverty and crime. Tribalism and religious wars break out, leading to many killings across the land, and the country seems on the verge of breaking or dividing. With Nigeria's population so big, regional conflicts become a thing. Food insecurities and floods set in,
and many people die from starvation. Politicians start taking their kids and families abroad to live because they think Nigeria is no longer safe, and they were the cause of it. The only good thing is that Nigeria improved in electricity, but the leaders were so corrupted that a selected leader tried to make the Nigerian leadership his birthright, which broke into a civil war. High inflation and debt come in. The country is dealing with high inflation, with the naira's value falling significantly against the dollar, driving up the cost of imports and food. Public debt has risen to around $400 billion, with interest payments consuming a large portion of government revenue. The question is, will Nigeria survive this? It's for the present leaders to question themselves. Ethiopia, in the year 2089, faces severe challenges. Water access is a major issue, with 200 million people lacking access to safe water. The situation is dire, with people collapsing on the streets due to lack of energy, resulting in many fatalities. Ethiopia's population reaches 300 million, putting a strain on the healthcare system, which is struggling to cope due to inadequate investment in the health sector by the government. The country is also grappling with debt distress, characterized as unsustainable by the World Bank due to high short-term and medium-term debt service payments. Food insecurity is another pressing concern, exacerbated by erratic rainfall patterns, potentially linked to La Niña, which threatens to worsen malnutrition, particularly in the southern and southeastern lowlands, still recovering from a previous drought. Looking at 2025, it's possible that some of these challenges could escalate by 2089 if left unaddressed. Ethiopia has been facing food insecurity, malnutrition, and water access issues, which could worsen with population growth and climate-related shocks. By 2089, Africa's fate lies on a knife's edge. While the world advances towards AI-driven societies and space colonization, Africa still wrestles with the same demons: corruption, greed, weak governments, and endless conflicts. And this time, the price of failure is extinction. In 2089, the Congo is a shadow of itself. The once rich nation, overflowing with cobalt, diamonds, and gold, has become a battlefield of starvation and chaos. Corrupt officials have sold the nation's mineral wealth to foreign powers, while citizens fight for scraps.
Armed militias rule most provinces, each declaring independence under different flags. Kinshasa, once bustling with life, is now a fortified city surrounded by famine and disease. The Congo River, the lifeline of the nation, has turned toxic from decades of unchecked mining and waste. Millions depend on polluted water. The east becomes a war zone between new breakaway states: North Kivu Republic, Katanga Free State, and Congo Nouvelle. The United Nations withdraws, calling the region ungovernable. The floods that began in the 2060s have never stopped. By 2098, the Nile Delta is gone. Cairo's ancient streets lie beneath layers of salt and sand. The government moved its capital deep into the desert, building vertical glass cities powered by solar fields, but only the elite live there. The poor, nearly 150 million people, survive in refugee zones outside the megacity walls. As the Mediterranean rises, Alexandria becomes an underwater ruin. The Great Pyramids still stand, but half buried in silt and forgotten. Egypt divides between the coastal Exodus refugees and the desert citizens, two classes of Egyptians living in two different worlds. Once known for its peace and tourism, Tanzania in 2098 faces internal fractures. Severe droughts dry up Lake Victoria, killing millions of fish and destroying the fishing industry. The Serengeti plains turn to dust, wildlife disappears. The government collapses under debt and resource scarcity. Hunger riots become daily reality in Dar es Salaam.
When food stops arriving, entire provinces rebel, forming the Eastern Federation of Tanganyika, breaking away from the mainland government. By 2098, the once peaceful country is split in two, its borders drawn by survival, not politics. Kenya faces one of the most complex crises of the century. Rising temperatures destroy agriculture, crippling food production. The Maasai lands become barren deserts, and the Rift Valley turns into a lifeless canyon. Technology thrives, but only for the powerful. Nairobi transforms into Neo-Nairobi, a walled city of AI-driven skyscrapers and floating highways. Outside the walls, poverty reigns. Tribes clash again over land and water. The old tribal wars return, but deadlier with advanced weapons. The northern region declares independence as Republic of Turkana, controlling Africa's last freshwater reserves. Kenya breaks apart, one nation for the rich, another for the forgotten. Uganda, in 2098, is suffocating under population pressure. The once fertile lands are dry and overworked. Kampala turns into one of the most overcrowded cities in the world, where 50 million people live packed in crumbling high-rises. Water and electricity are rationed. Only those who can pay survive. Rebellion breaks out as military regimes fight to control the nation's dwindling resources. Neighboring countries close their borders, calling Uganda the Red Zone. In desperation, millions flee north into South Sudan and Kenya, creating the largest migration crisis in African history. By 2098, Africa's total population surpasses 3.7 billion. But instead of unity, the continent fractures into hundreds of smaller states, ruled by warlords, corporations, and AI-controlled governments. The African Union collapses after a series of cyber attacks and internal disputes. A new map of Africa emerges, redrawn not by colonial powers, but by famine, flood, and war. Over 15 new countries rise from old nations. Examples include New Biafra, Katanga Free State, the Republic of Turkana, Southern Nile Federation, and Tanganyika Federation. By then, half the continent is uninhabitable due to flooding, desertification, and conflict. AI-run corporations own Africa's resources, while millions of climate refugees drift across the Sahara, searching for survival. The prophecy of the century becomes reality. Africa's greatest threat was never poverty, it was leadership. The question is no longer if this will happen, it's when. To those alive 2098, I hope you fix it with care. This is Voices of the Forgotten,